Folks, 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 4 makes an amazing statement here. Let me read it for you out of my book, The Great End Time Distraction. But this is from 2 Timothy 4:4. It says this, "And they shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned unto fables." I'm afraid a lot of folks today have been turned unto fables instead of the truth. In our program today, I've got Dr. Hiltibidal with me in the studio, and we're gonna take some questions from the viewers. I've written a bunch of them down from YouTube and other places, phone calls. Some questions from you, the viewer, and we're going to deal with them today. Plus some current events going on that we're going to share with you as well. So stay tuned. And welcome, Brother Goodwin here, Dr. Charles Hiltibidal sitting with me. Doc, we're in from West Virginia.
Yes, good meeting.
If the folks watched last week's program, we were in West Virginia. We actually did a live show. Yeah. Well, it's recorded here, but we did it before a live audience. And from the church that we did a prophecy conference. So why don't we just make a statement or two about prophecy conferences and what we'd like to be doing.
Well, I've had preachers say they enjoyed watching it, and they're thinking about how that might help them. And I've had a couple of lay people say, "Boy, I wish our preacher would do that." So I think it's effective, yes.
Yeah. And
we could help churches, I really do believe.
Yeah, and I think we make a good team. You hit different areas than I do, and they kind of blend together.
Yep.
And the preacher there said it was fabulous. We did one in Michigan together. He was very happy up there.
Yes.
And but we need to do more of these. Now, you don't have to have both of us. You can have Brother Hiltibidal, or you can have me, or you can have both of us. And we'd love to talk to you about that. Just send us an email or call the 800 number and ask to talk to one of us about it. And we'd be glad to do that.
Yes.
Because I believe, like you do, we're on the end of this.
We're at the end of it. It's obvious. Some of the news things you're talking about, I mean, it's obvious. We're at the end of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've gathered some questions from some of the viewers, and we're gonna get to those in just a minute. But I thought we'd start with some news stories that are going on. This is the 15th, I believe, today, the recording of this video, and. Sometimes we have to do 2 or 3 shows, so you got shows that are stuck out there, and you can't be recurrent. Right. But every now and then we come in a show, we're right up against it. In fact, we got to get this to our producer tonight so that he can get it ready for television. So this one's going to be pretty current. So I like these kind of things because we can look at things that are going on
in our world right now.
So let me. I got a few that I printed off before I got to the studio today. First of all, there's the bomb that went off in the UK on Sunday, and the title is this: the UK raises terror threat to severe following deadly Liverpool taxi explosion. Yeah. Now there was at the hospital.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to have done a lot more damage, but the driver of the taxi caught on to what was going on. He actually got out of the car and locked the doors.
Oh, really?
He was injured.
I didn't read that.
He was injured, but he's okay. He was let out of the hospital, but of course the car blew up. But they said either the explosion didn't go off right, or the guy didn't know what he was doing, and it wasn't very powerful, but they're claiming it was terrorism. And now this is from a girl named Jill Lawless. This is actually this is November 15th. This story, and I think the day before is when this happened. This just happened, and they're calling it terrorism, and they have upped their terror threat to severe. Yeah. And I think that's interesting.
Did they say anything about any nationalities involved? Probably not.
If they did, I'm not sure that I got. I highlighted a couple things here. This Sunday's explosion at Liverpool Women's Hospital was caused by the ignition of an explosive device that was brought into the vehicle by a passenger. And they called this passenger a male passenger.
Yeah, that sounds pretty.
Now, what was his, nationality? I don't know. Home Secretary Patel told reporters that the threat level increase came in the context of this being the second alleged terrorist incident in the space of a month. She did not elaborate. Now, they always know more than they tell you. So,
oh yeah. Well, they keep letting them across the pond, across that canal. They get over there all the time.
And they already blew it over there. The whole place, the whole country's in discord because people of different
they're worse
cultures.
off than we are, if that's possible.
You can't live together. A lion and a lamb can't live together on the same.
Not in this world.
No, not till the next.
No, that's right.
And that's why separation. That's why cultures can't.
That might be part of the clay and the iron that's not amalgamating together in the final days of the Gentile world too.
Now here's another interesting story, and the title is this. This is by Jonathan Tobin. The date of the article is November 2nd, so this is a couple weeks ago. And it says this: is this the beginning of a new Cold War between President Biden, and the nation of Israel? And let me just read a few things that I highlighted here. I found this kind of interesting. As far as Israeli Prime Minister Bennett and Foreign Minister Lapid are concerned, this week has brought a perfect storm of circumstances that threaten to complicate their hopes for a better relationship with the United States. Both men, and he's talking about Prime Minister Bennett, who replaced Bibi, and the Foreign Minister, Yair Lapid, both men, each for their own reasons, see establishing a good rapport with President Joe Biden and his administration as one of their main goals.
Yeah, that's financial.
And I was talking to you about this before we went on the air here. I'm a little disappointed in Israel, even under Bibi when he was here. I mean, it just seems like they feel like they can't make it without us. They got to have our dollars. They got to have our protection. I think Israel can handle itself.
They can, but I think it all plays into prophecy. The Bible said, until the fullness of the Gentiles become in, Jerusalem is trampled under their feet.
Yeah,
and Jerusalem has Israel has the mindset. Their leadership has a mindset. And I don't know if it'll ever be lit up. I think it's the mindset that's going to cause them to rapidly accept their Messiah, the false Messiah, the Antichrist. They have the mindset that it's going to require a Gentile ruler to give them the authority to do something.
Yeah. Yep. All right, well, there was something in this article that caught my attention, and that's why I brought this to the studio today. This shouldn't be a surprise to us, but listen to this. The ousting of former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, we call him Bibi, who is viewed by Biden's team as the devil incarnate, would ensure the president's goodwill and protect them against the kind of hostility that was the hallmark of U.S. attitudes towards Jerusalem the last time Democrats were in power. And I wrote this down under that statement. Bibi had to go because Trump lost.
Yep.
He didn't really, but
Yes.
Trump is no longer the president. Biden and the far left wing of the Democrat movement is in charge.
The deep state of the world, whatever that really is, and whoever they are, they were bound and determined to get rid of anything that was a nationalist.
Right.
And Bibi was.
And so with Bibi gone, there's more of a chance that this administration will deal with Bennett, the new Israeli administration.
Well, and Bennett already demonstrated from the beginning that he had compromised from all of his supposed former positions. He was willing to compromise, bring the Arabs in, all of this other. So, yeah, I'm sure they think they can get along.
And that really seems to be their main focus is what can we do politically to gain the favor of the United States so that we can get their protection and their dollars.
But your article you're talking about is they've come to the realization, wait a minute, this bringing the Palestinian headquarters supposedly back into Jerusalem again, that's a final straw with them. Maybe that caused them to wake up to it. I don't know.
Yeah, now I'm not reading most of the articles. I just picked out a few things in here that caught my attention. And boy, I hope the audience doesn't get the idea that I'm anti-Semitic or I'm against Israel.
No,
I'm not. I'm for Israel, but the viewers need to realize Israel is not what most of us Christians think they are. They're not trusting in the Messiah. Most of them. There are some, but.
Well, there is. You've got your Orthodox Jews, and inside of that, you've got various factions. You've got the cabal and all of these others, and you got to be careful. But yes, the political leadership may have a little bit of a religious tint brought into them, but
they have some conservative slant, but they have abortion there. Yeah. They have
the largest gay parade in Tel Aviv. So
I almost brought one of them. There was a story about that, but I didn't. I didn't bring that one in. But and the one where they changed their gender, whatever that's called. There was an article about that in Israel.
Well, Israel is doing everything they can to win the favor of any Gentile nation that appears to have some clout in the world. Because I'm telling you, it all goes back to the prophecy of the fact that Israel, even though they're a nation again, they're still trampled underfoot by the Gentile kingdoms, and they don't do anything without the Gentile kingdom somewhere saying that's okay to do. They're trying to win that favor.
And that's a good perspective that you've brought out. They're just in this for it's the Gentile rule.
Yes.
And they're trying to appease and make friends with the guy who's going to try to sustain
whoever
them.
appears to be. I mean, look how many times they've gone up to Russia, trying to make sure they got Russia on their side, and they're trying to get this one and that one on their side. And it all goes to the fact that they perceive that they can't do it without a Gentile kingdom approving of it.
Now, this one goes hand in hand. It's a long article, but I'm just going to read a couple of lines and we'll move on. But this is actually a story from October 15th. So this is several weeks ago. From John Hanna, a senior fellow at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. And it's titled this: Israel needs weapons to stop Iran's bomb. Jerusalem needs help from Washington. The subtitle: Jerusalem needs help from Washington to prevail in a terrible conflict. And that's going to lead me into my next story. But he says this: in Washington on Wednesday, now this is a couple weeks ago, Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, and we talked about him again. Remember, there's a prime minister. This is the foreign minister. He warned that Israel was prepared to use military force to stop Iran from gaining nuclear weapons capability. Now, we know this, and they need to. They're
going to have to.
And he says this: we have no intention of letting them get the bomb. And down here he says the chances that President Joe Biden will order the U.S. military to attack Iran and stop it from becoming a nuclear weapon state borders on zero.
Zilch. Yeah, absolutely. You can bank on that.
Yeah. So what he's saying is Israel is going to have to do it. And I've said that for years.
Yes.
I understand why they want us to do it. It gets the pressure off them.
Sure. Well, they know if they do it, it's probably the retaliation.
There'll be retaliation. If America does it,
if Psalms 83 is a war that some of us believe might be, that would certainly probably instigate the start of that. And there'd be repercussions on it. It's not that Israel doesn't have the ability to do it, Dan. You know that.
Sure they do. Yep.
They very well can do that.
Yep. Now that leads into this story that I was telling you about before we went on the air. Israel holds COVID-19 war game to prepare for next outbreak.
Maybe they're forecasting something.
Now, this is a story by someone named Ryan Jones, November 11th, 2021. So this is recent. And this was interesting. And it goes along with the need to stop Iran, because I'm not sure this story is telling the whole story. I think there's something behind the scenes here. So let me just read a little bit of this. You'd think the nation were, let's see, Israelis expressed mounting skepticism as government also approves coronavirus vaccine for children aged 5 to 11. You'd think the nation was under a nuclear attack. What do Israel's leaders expect to happen in the next wave of coronavirus infections?
Yep.
That's anyone's guess, as they were rushed into a secure bunker on Thursday amid a nationwide war game in preparation for a future outbreak of the virus. This is pretty shocking here. And I wrote over here on the side, I said, or is this a preparation for something else? This
could be a cover.
This little test they had, this war game. This was a drill, a live drill that the nation of Israel did. Everybody had to go to their bunkers.
They have those kind of drills every once in a while in Israel already.
Yep. And they have a place where the prime minister and the government, they say it's nuclear resistant. I'm real curious what in the world this thing is, but it's got to be deep underground, whatever it is. Yeah. And so they're in their bunkers, and they're all wondering, what is coming?
Yeah.
And they have a picture here, but they called it the Omega drill.
Omega drill.
Maybe some of our viewers, maybe that word Omega means something.
Something, yes. Amen.
Let's see. Omega, is that a Greek alphabet or something?
Might be something.
Is that one of the...
I've read it somewhere in the Bible,
He's the beginning
too.
and the end. The Omega isn't?
Yeah.
I might be wrong there. I don't know. Anyway, the Omega drill, the exercise simulated the public being subjected to mass testing and curfews while Prime Minister Bennett and his cabinet holed up in an underground nuclear blast-proof facility in the Jerusalem hills. Maybe
they're taking their lead from Australia.
Yeah.
Oh my.
And so now here's a tweet from Mr. Bennett, and the date of this tweet was November 10th. I think the drill was November 11th. He said this: the Israeli government will conduct a national drill tomorrow, the 11th, aimed at examining nationwide readiness for the mass outbreak of a new lethal variant. Why do you got to go to a bunker?
Yeah.
Well, this is strange.
It may be tied with your other story. If they do go in, take out the program, there'll be maybe chemical, biological warfare against them.
Yeah. So you're thinking the same
they've been
thing
used
I
to
am.
it.
This really isn't about COVID. This
Probably
is about
not.
something else in retaliation, because they're getting ready to take out Iran.
It's very possible.
He says the simulation will be in the format of a war game and is called the Omega drill. Follow here from more, he says. Now, this is a text from Bennett.
Yeah.
Interesting. Government officials later stressed that they had no information regarding a deadly new strain.
Yeah.
But yet they're having this drill.
Yeah.
You ain't fooling everybody over there. Let's see. And the drill simulated a hypothetical situation. Many Israelis, however, were not impressed and urged the prime minister in responses to its social media posts to stop spreading panic.
Yeah.
Really?
Wouldn't be too hard to spread panic in our world today.
Yeah. I think they learned it from us.
Well,
Israel's COVID infection rates have been in sharp decline in recent months, and life has largely returned to normal, which is why Israelis were also puzzled by the government's urgency in approving vaccines for young children 5 to 11.
Well, that's going on all over the world.
Yeah.
There's zero purpose for it scientifically.
By the way, somebody wrote, there's no money to be made on natural immunity.
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah. With while a sizable number of children in that age group have been infected, very, very few have suffered severe illness.
Oh, yes.
And almost no deaths from it.
Yeah.
It will be an uphill struggle to convince most Israeli parents to get this for their children. I'm being vague here on purpose. And then many Israelis were also upset by the fact that the panel on Wednesday approving this vax was held behind closed doors.
Oh, yes.
Despite the government's promise for greater transparency.
Well, that's a promise of governments all over the world.
Some Israelis expressed to Israel Today, the Israel Today news organization, that in spite of their overall support for the government, the current government, they have lost trust in the nation's leaders when it comes to the handling of their health. And
well, that's a worldwide sentiment, Dan.
Yeah,
definitely.
And we got one more story here about the Gaza Strip, but I'm gonna skip that and go right into some of our questions from the viewers that we have had.
Tell them about the support for us.
Okay, we are viewer supported. Obviously, we are paid up through the end of December, but that next payment is going to come due in January, and our payments have gone up.
Yes.
And I don't know how we're going to handle it. We need more of you folks out there to do what you can. If you enjoy the program, we'd love for you to get involved. There's an 800 number you can call. There's an email that you can get us on, or just go to the website and you can donate right from the website, Prosting the Spotlight. So we also have a special donation package deal with a book. I think it's your
Mark of the Beast,
pamphlet,
booklet,
and I think it's Crossing Jordan with Michael Samuel Smith, a DVD, and we're going to give you that for a donation of at least $50 or more. And so, listener supported, viewer supported. We're just hanging on.
Every dime that comes in goes straight to pay that bill.
We get no salaries here, and we have our own ministries on the side. So. And we have a few people supporting us as well, but we have had a lot of viewers send in questions through YouTube or Rumble, on the Rumble channel, the YouTube channel, or they just email me a question.
Right.
Some of them we're not going to answer. Some of them are just people that just, I guess they don't like us. I think it's you, Doc, that they don't like. But
that's probably.
But anyway. If
it's a doctrinal issue.
Some of them are just trying to express their dislike, but there's some genuine questions, and I thought we'd deal with some of them. And we'll probably do another show with that because the news stories we just read took up a lot of the time. But I have a few things here that I thought I would start with. We're going to start with you, and we'll go back and forth because many of the viewers expressed, Dr. Hilt said so and so. Could you have him explain it? And so, Doc, the first thing was this. Questions from the viewers. Number one, to Doc, please explain the gap theory. And this person specified, what is the gap theory for someone who doesn't really understand it? When did this gap theory get introduced to the world? And why does it matter one way or the other? So why don't you tackle that?
Well, it's kind of like a lot of the terms that we use. Sometimes we just, as Bible teachers and preachers, pastors, we often just assume everybody understands the terms we use. The gap theory is a theory, and it's kind of like the evolution is a theory. And the theory goes that there is a gap of time between verse number 1 and verse number 2 of Genesis chapter number 1, which is grammatically not even correct in the Hebrew and itself, but because verse number 2 is a coupletive to add an understanding of the condition of what was just stated in verse number 1. So the gap theory is saying that there was a gap of time between verse 1 and verse 2, and that the creation we have today that's recorded after verse number 2 in Genesis chapter 1 is actually a recreation. So then they go over to the book of Ezekiel, and there you discover, I believe it's in the 14th chapter of the rebellion of Lucifer. And so therefore they say, well, there was a pre-existing world, and really the water that you see in verse number 2 is a way God destroyed the first world under Lucifer's guidance. And so there was a Luciferian flood between verse 1 and verse number 2. They call it a gap. Well, how long was that gap of time? Well, there is no gap. Verse number 2 is explaining the condition of what God brought into existence on day number 1, water.
So when did this theory get? When did this
It began back at the same time evolution began gaining traction. At the same time, our King James Bibles were being translated in the 1600s. And so what was happening as up until then, the clergy, they were seen by the world as on the level with the doctors and the scientists and the politicians. But now all of a sudden they're being brought into question. Maybe this Bible, you clergy's not been, maybe you're not really right. Maybe there is an evolution. And so they come up with theistic evolution, that somehow or another God started it all and then evolution took it from there. And so they began to try to figure out how can we compete with all of this. So it was in the 1700s that the gap theory became a common belief system.
And so why is this a big deal, which way we fall in? Because I'm with you, I don't believe in
because if there was no gap, which there is not, if there's no gap, then there's no place to squeeze a Luciferian flood in. There's no way to go over and try to prove that in Genesis chapter 6, these are fallen angels from that pre-existing world. So from that pre-existing world, these now are fallen angels that are now on this side of this creation in Genesis chapter 6. If you don't have a gap theory, you don't have any place to put all of that fictional. And by the way, all of that's a theory as well.
Perfect. Great answer, and I agree with you 1,000%. That leads us to another question, and this one's addressed at me. Why is, and this will go right along with yours, why is the Nephilim teaching such a great distraction in your mind? And they're talking to me, and I think because of my book, The Great End Time Distraction, if they can see that there.
Yeah.
Let me just very simply say this. It's a great distraction because it takes us away. It takes God's people away from the things that matter.
That matter.
People that get caught up in that are in something that's not biblical. Yep. It's not scientifically possible.
Yeah, right.
It's not biblically accurate, and therefore, when we dwell on that, we're dwelling on something that's a fable.
It's a fable.
It's not, and that is very important in my mind to understand. And so, Doc, that just we got through 2 questions.
Yeah,
and we're out of time already.
Almost out of time.
Now, in 2 weeks we'll continue this, but next week we got something special. A
yes, it will be
special right here, folks. You're not going to want to miss this. Doc and I will be here next week, the day after Thanksgiving. We'll air on that Friday, like we always do. We have some special guests. We're going to have a special Thanksgiving Day. We've got a special guest coming. My producer, Rex, will be here. He'll be on camera. My wife sitting behind the camera back there, switching the things. She's going to have a brief little thing where you'll get to meet her. And I can't wait, and it's going to be exciting. So I hope you'll be here. But until next time, keep your eyes on the skies.